you are probably coming to me at the moment you were ready for this information. It's not necessarily helpful to look back and be like, oh, I wish I had the wisdom then, because you were getting yourself to the wisdom that you're getting now. And you needed that. It was fundamental, and you were just doing the best thing you can. And I do think most of my clients end up with that kind of belief that I don't regret the past. It doesn't need to be seen as a mistake. It can be formative. I can give myself compassion. I can understand how I got there. And I see now how I'm using it to get myself out.
Seanydoo. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Situaseans podcast. I'm your host, Sean Michael Williams, aka Seanydoo. You can call me Sean. Seanydoo does not matter to me. I'm just glad that y'all are here, and I have a very special guest here, a board-certified wellness coach, licensed social worker, and somatic practitioner specializing in trauma and identity. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the podcast, Devin Scott.
Thank you for having me today, Sean. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm so excited as well. And, just like reading like your bio and just learning about how, you're like the founder of Find Your Meaning and how you're helping people with like so many different, like psychological, practices and insights. So I'm excited to learn more about you. Can you kind of just tell us where you're coming from, where you're dialing in from? Tell us all about you.
Okay, well, just on a personal level, I'm from rural upstate New York, a town of around 900. So rural bred, a small town boy. I spent most of my adult life in Philadelphia, but now I'm in Brooklyn, New York, which is new and chaotic and exploratory for me.
Amazing, amazing. I've only been to New York about 3 or 4 times about now, but, absolutely I love the East Coast. I love the food over there. Yeah, I'm in LA now, but I was from Chicago, so kinda used to, like, the cold East Coast, kinda weather, but yeah.
I bet you don't miss the colds.
No, not at all. Just hearing about, like, the recent snowstorm that rolled in, I was like, "Oh," just when you thought the East Coast was done with the weather, all of a sudden.
I think that's the energy of the moment. We keep thinking we're gonna catch a break, and then we don't.
Exactly. Like one of my good friends was like, "The weather's kinda like dating." I'm like, how so?" It's like, "Yeah, you never know what you're gonna get, and so there's always a new day, and sometimes just when you think you've had enough, you get more."
Yeah, it's true, and it can change on a whim. You just gotta be paying attention and be prepared.
Exactly. Uh, so can you kind of share with us like more about so tell me like what are some of your favorite things about the New York scene and kind of just advertise New York like at least for me.
Oh, I am, like, the worst person to do it because I am still trying to fall in love with New York. But the things I do love here is that you can just, like, really get lost in a day. Like, if you just start walking and going from one thing, you can just end up on a totally different plot and, like, side quest to side quest, and you just lose track of the day, and in the process, you can meet the most interesting people. It's just by sheer scale and diversity, like, you just never know what you're gonna get, and that I love.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And there's always something to do out there. And I definitely love like the pizza. Like this is like the one thing that I'll never understand is like, so from Chicago, we just call it a pizza, but you all call it a pie. I'm like, what the fuck is a pie? But overall, I love the New York culture. Like y'all get it. So so as far as just like your journey to coaching, can you kind of share like with us, like how did you get there?
Oh, it's still, like, very much a journey in progress. So I started on my journey through mindfulness and yoga as I was trying to, like, work on myself and heal myself, and I kept kind of collecting weird credentials. I am licensed for psychotherapy, but I don't practice. I'm licensed for massage. I do practice, but in a very niche way. I'm licensed for personal training, but I only do it in very specific contexts. But kind of as I just kept getting all these trainings in mindfulness and yoga and therapy and psychology and body work, I just liked blending them in really weird ways. And somatics is this vague concept where you just sit with the body as a whole. And so body can be very broad. It can be your muscles, it could be your energy body, it could be your brain, it could be your spirit. And you're just kind of seeing what happens. And it's a beautiful combination of science and art where you just play around, experiment, and see what helps move people forward.
Absolutely. And, like, how many years have you had, have you had, Find Your Meaning? Tell me about, like, the startup and how you got that going.
So I actually just put it under this brand last year, but I've been doing it for about 6 years. But before that, I didn't put it under a formal business. It was more word of mouth, just playing around, figuring it out. And I'm still tinkering around and changing my services and my offerings. And I think more than the work, I like learning. And so as I get a new skill, I change my service and I experiment and I tinker, and then I add something new.
That's amazing, and it sounds like you're helping people all over the world. It's not just New York, it's could you have online practices? You have, like, in person, it sounds like? Yeah.
Yeah, so coaching, breathwork, teaching all around the world. Sadly, body work, I am limited. If my hands are going on, I got to do it here.
I mean, you can't stretch your arm across the world, come on now.
I can try, but energy modalities you can do across the world, which is bizarre and fun and often feels like magic. So
Yeah.
I do like that.
Absolutely, and, like, it's and even just, like, people it sounds like you're working with people of all ages, like adults of all ages from, like, people that are really old or people that are as young as, like, 21, or it sounds like it's all is there's, like, no specific range that you specifically focus on. It's kinda
I don't have its focus, but you know what? Gen Z does not come to me.
really?
Yeah, that one
Wow.
I've had, like, 1 Gen Z client in the last year and a half. It's mostly 30 to 80, and then it runs the gamut, it can be anything. I've developed a unexpected practice focus on immigrants from Eastern Europe, which came to me naturally, like, organically, but wasn't something I was looking for. But I find the work is so expansive and broad that it whatever comes, it can always adapt to it, which I like.
Absolutely, absolutely. And even just as far as even what you're doing currently and how you're helping people with these practices, can you kind of tell me like how it also like maybe like have people ever come to you and say, "Hey, I'm kind of like feeling this type of energy because of like my dating life or this is going on and like I need like a spiritual recharge. Can you help me kind of work through that?" How does that look like? How do you navigate them through all of that?
I think romance is like the canary in the coal mine. It is, in my experience, the single most common thing to get someone into therapy or coaching or any kind of self development work is when something feels off in dating or in love. It's not necessarily the root problem, but I, honestly, like half of my clients, I think, come because they had a breaking point or a wall in one of these issues, and that's the one that they want to resolve. And it usually does not involve dating, coaching, or working and necessarily. It involves figuring out what the obstacles are below that, but it's kind of omnipresent.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Because even just reading like your bio and like how, you're working with people that have like just carried like so many different weights of the world, like you like trauma, or even like you just said, like they reached that breaking point. And so and even like just expectations of like, society, like social media, all these other things that kind of, drain us. It's amazing that you're kind of like helping them yeah, take that time to look within themselves and then using these like somatic practices. And like, would you say that that even just working with like your clients that you like coming out of it, they're like, oh my God, like I wish I came to you before. I wish I known about this before.
No.
Wow.
But I think it might be a part of my particular way of practice or my kind of existential framing to it was is that like if you were meant to know before, you would have known before. Like just existentially, you are probably coming to me at the moment you were ready for this information. The versions of you that existed before were in a different period. They were learning a different lesson. And it's not necessarily helpful to look back and be like, "Oh, I wish I had the wisdom then," because you were getting yourself to the wisdom that you're getting now, and you needed that. It was fundamental, and you were just doing the best thing you can. And I do think most of my clients end up with that kind of belief that I don't regret the past. It doesn't need to be seen as a mistake. It can be formative. I can give myself compassion. I can understand how I got there. And I see now how I'm using it to get myself out.
Absolutely. I love that. And even like, have you ever like worked with a client that maybe came to you that was kind of like hesitant? That was like, oh, I don't know if I believe in it, but I want to try it. Like, like how is like, have you ever had to work with someone that was hesitant at first?
All the time.
Yeah. Because like the
um,
average person would be like, wait, what? Like, you do what? I don't believe it. Like,
and my work is so woo woo. It's esoteric. It's like witchcrafty. And I get a lot of cerebral clients, and I get them because they weren't succeeding at the socially normative approach. And they just were so desperate to move past whatever is blocking them, they're going to try something weird. And I love working with clients, and they're my most frustrating clients because my work is trying to get someone back into their body. And for people who are very cerebral, it takes a long time to disrupt the way it moves to the mentalization aware, the way it moves to rumination, the way they think. And you just spend a lot of time like, okay, well, like I notice you want to tell this story. Can you take a big breath and a loud exhale and I'll tap your chest and can we come back here? I think I spend a lot of time in a kind of psych education with people who are resistant, which is not justifying what I do, but explaining that it's not anti-science.
yes.
Uh, I think for some reason, especially in like Western theory, we think of emotions or physical pain and physical sensation as different or less than cognitive thought. But physical pain is just a thought process of the brain. Emotions are just a thought process of the brain. They're just a different formation of them, but we were trained to not care about pain or think it's more real or different, but it's just the brain showing us something in a particular way, and this one's not with words. Uh, and when you can
Yeah.
start to, like, go into this, and, like, we're not out of the brain, we're in a different section of the brain. It's just the same work almost.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because like even like me, like just like having friends, like who like like who think more in like the spiritual realm and like think about like okay, like spiritual healing and stuff like that. I've definitely like got a chance to kind of dip more into it like these last 4 or 5 years, and I'm like, wow, like I wish I'd known about this before because this is pretty cool work. And for the first time, well, actually a few weeks ago from the time that we're recording this, I had did like a one of those like sound experience, like those sound bath
Mm.
experiences. Oh my goodness, to tell you that, like, I came out of that session feeling, like, refreshed. I'm like, "Why didn't I do this before?" And again, like, I'm not, like, this religious person or whatever, I'm more so, like, spiritual. I believe in, like, the like, energies and, there's something out there. But yeah, I just didn't I just never knew where to start as far as getting over into, like, thinking about some of these more holistic approaches until, like, yeah, just having friends or even just online and social media scrolling through reels and seeing, wow. So, yeah.
And it requires a different way of thinking about knowledge. Like, if you grew up in Western education or a place that was colonialized by it, you are trained that, like, the only form of knowledge that is of value is the one that has gone through peer-reviewed research. But most of these modalities have just not gone through peer-reviewed research. It's not like they've been studied and debunked or something like that, but rather we live in experiential knowledge, which is I've felt
Mm.
it, I've sensed it, I've seen its value, and I trust myself. And we are really trained to not trust ourselves, to think our experiential knowledge is it's just fundamentally less valuable than the book we're reading in the school. And even like things like acupuncture, which is one of the most well-studied energy modalities, it's studied and we know it's effective, but we have no idea why. Like, we cannot explain it in Western anatomy. We just know it works. And it still creates this gap where the experiential knowledge is hard to trust because it feels somehow unreal.
Yeah, and I remember reading like scientists like they still haven't really understood like the full function of like the human brain. We're still finding things
Mhm.
out to this day. And so, yeah, that just, like adds on to your point is like, yeah, like there is a lot more that we don't know that haven't even been, like even conceptualized or even like, or that can't necessarily be, I guess, what do you call it, like written down in these articles or like or in these, scientific journals because yeah, we haven't fully understand like the human mind. How is that going to be published when we haven't even understood like how we even function as a being?
And we
For
may
sure.
never.
Exactly, exactly. And maybe that's intended too because of like, whatever's out there that kind of, balances the scales of it all. Maybe we're not meant to know like the entire meaning of life. um, so even kind of coming across like your website and your services and even just like, looking deeper into like your work. So I had saw that you had mentioned over there that you say meaning is made and not found. So kind of like expanding on that. So when someone feels completely broken, especially after like burnout or loss or even just years of just, just going through it, what does it particularly look like to start making meaning again?
I think it starts by suffering.
Yeah.
In yoga, nihilism or antariksha and depression or duke and yoga, they exist to call attention to us that our prior ways of making meaning of our life are failing us. Like,
Yeah.
it's a reorientation process, and we reorient by suffering. And the great metaphor that always gets used is the chrysalis of a butterfly, which is suffering is when the caterpillar creates the chrysalis and literally dissolves into gel. And it has to decide to leave the cocoon at the right moment because if it leaves too early, it's still gel. And if it leaves too late, it is already dead. And the first thing of finding meaning is just feeling why you lack it and
Yeah.
going into the depths of that despair. And I say this as a person who had a traumatic breakup in November, and I am very deep in suffering and nihilism where a lot of my systems of meaning are just no longer motivating me. And even just my adherence on grit or willpower is failing me. Um, and I think there's an irony to your question because my business is find your meaning, but I do think of meaning as made, but somewhere in the middle because there's an exploratory nature where we have to bring playfulness back into our life and just try something and see if it brings meaning. Try something and see if it brings meaning. Try something and see if it brings meaning. Experiment, play, and we often find multiple ways of looking at the value of a situation or life or the reason for living. But at a certain point, we have to land on one because the indecision will trap us. And I don't think in a human form we get absolute truth. Maybe the meaning I make for my breakup is not the one I will find on a post-death experience. Maybe I
Yeah.
will find I was a little off, but I make one in this lifetime and I make the choice of the one that feels like it's propelling me forward. And once you get that, you can start moving. Um,
Yeah. No, that's really deep. I really appreciate you sharing that. And, even kind of adding on to that, do you think even just in your work, like, so you know how like you're helping so many people through a lot of like their psychological like journeys and even just like in this way, do you think it's harder for you to do it to yourself? Like, because like example, if you're going through a breakup, like is it harder to do it to yourself? Because like again, it's so much easier to kind of like, help others. But like, yeah, how do you do it for yourself? It's kind of like, hey, does a therapist have a therapist? You know what I mean?
definitely. I have a therapist coach. Uh,
Yeah.
she works a lot like me and she catches me in my sulking. Um, and I think sulking is a wonderful thing. I think it's delicious to gnaw on self-pity, and we have to keep moving through at a certain point, and she's really good at disrupting this pattern for me. Um, but I think doing it to yourself, I am not sure if I'm handling my current situation the best possible, but I think as someone who does the work, I try really hard to not have a perfectionist mindset with it.
Yeah.
Um, Which is like, I am just trying really hard not to think like, I know the timeline for this, or I know the steps for this, or there's a right way to do this. And every time I catch myself thinking that, the universe is sending me something to like really disrupt the course and remind me that I'm not in control and that I don't have all the information yet.
Yeah.
So it just requires a lot of patience and sitting with myself. And I've been allowing myself to numb or avoid when I really need it, as long as I'm not avoiding the processing entirely. And I'm really relying on social support. Um, I've talked my friends' ears off.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
so appreciate that they're so tolerant about it, but there's not a one size fits all. You just do your best to sit with the process until clarity emerges.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that, and I know for like myself, so for a very short period of time, I was dating somebody for like 3 months, and like thought it was gonna work out, but long story short, like after the first month, she had like pretty much said some very invalidating things, and kind of just did some very disrespectful things, like in front of me with other friends, like. Goodness, like, basically, so one of her friends, she was kinda, like, flirting with this guy who was, like, a friend and a former boss of her in front of me while she, invited me out with her to go to go dancing with friends, and so I'm like, "Oh my goodness," like, and so that kinda rubbed me the wrong way, and then, there's just, like, some back and forth, between us just in general because, we kinda both come from a little bit of a, I guess, hectic childhood, but I had musical theater, I had all these other outlets to kinda channel that negativity, and so she, she's involved in the musical scene, theater scene out here too, but she's kind of like at the beginning of kind of like discovering like her inner self and putting like learning to put herself first. And so whereas like me, I've been working on this for a while and working with my therapist for a while, and so kind of these dynamics were just kind of clashing, and I'm just like, I think through during those 3 months, myself, and I'm sure, she as well, felt that, okay, we're in this negative repetitive cycle, and ultimately, it just had to end. Like, she wanted to keep going, but I was like, I literally can't. I have until like, this date until like I have to cut it off before I just lose myself as a being. But yeah, like what would you say for people that are out there that are kind of going through it as well? That's like, hey, maybe I feel stuck in something, but I don't know how to get out of it. But how do I seek healing and working with the coach to kind of get me on the track to the right steps.
Oh, this is big, right? I think first, I don't have answers. I can't say I believe there's a right step, and I kind of liked your little rule there of you just put a date on it. And I'll tell you what happened in my breakup.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Feel free to share whatever you feel comfortable with. This is a not judgment-free zone.
So mine's a bit of a mystery because I ended on gaslighting. Um,
I'm
but
so
my best
sorry.
understanding is that I was dating this man for 6 months and it was going really well, and I left for 3 weeks. And while I was gone, he got in a secret dom sub relationship,
Oh,
which became
no.
his primary relationship. And then, without my knowledge or consent, the dom started commanding when we could have sex, what we could do. And I believe videos and photos were shared afterwards to close the loop and actively degrade me. And I
Wow, I'm
became
so
kind of a
sorry.
kink prop in a relationship I had no context of or knowledge. And I had this beautiful relationship when I left. And I came back and it wasn't feeling right. And I was landing with this question of you, which is how much grace do I give someone? How much time do I wait and see if the relationship can grow versus how much do I get the ick or the discomfort and run? Um, and clearly, I think I did not balance right because I stayed so long. I got pretty bad trauma out of it. But I don't know if I should have left at my first fear either. And this is a really hard, personal, sticky question. And I was in something similar to you, which was that I had my discomfort, but I wasn't letting my discomfort alone be enough. I needed to have some kind of cognitive understanding. I needed to think about our childhood trauma. I needed to think about our difference in things. I needed to have certain examples and stories that I could probably label as socially inappropriate or like against the norms of society so that it wasn't actually a personal decision. So that I could defer it to social norms so that it wasn't just, I don't like this and I can leave. It was, you've done something that I can label as inappropriate because most people see it like that. And these are all incredibly murky questions.
Yeah.
Um, so this is rambling, but I don't know if everyone needs a coach or a therapist as they navigate it. But one thing I do think they need is non secrecy and second sets of ears.
Mhm. Yeah.
And the more we just label our ick, label our discomfort, and get second opinions on it, I think the more likely we're gonna get out before we stay too long.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, I definitely like how you put that because like, yeah, like there is no one size fits all. It is like, hey, what's gonna work best, for you and like your like yourself at the end of the day. And as try to find a solution out of it if you want to leave. And so and to make things better for yourself. And then like, yeah, also like how does the other person find like, themselves, and like that's gonna be on them. But yeah, thank you for like sharing that. I know it's definitely not, like not easy sharing something like that. And kind of to give you a little bit of background too, like so this person that I was dating was also involved in the kink community as well, and kind of wanted to initially start off with like, dating other people and like, and so I'm kind of like in that community as well, but more so on the, like I kind of have a history as far as like on the play side of it. And so, whereas she was more so in the rope side of it. So trying to like, align like our kinks at the beginning of it was kind of, difficult because we come from two separate worlds. And so, when we were first dating, she was like, "Okay, well, she wants to see other people." I'm like, "Okay, like that's fine, but okay, I'm gonna, kind of do the same. I'm gonna kind of like, focused on other people as well, and until like, yeah, either of us are ready to, see, I guess, revisit one on one. Long story short, she had told me, well, she would feel uncomfortable if I went to go, I guess, play with other people. And I'm just like, okay, so you can go play with other people, but I can't. I'm like, okay. So after just some back and forth and just discussions and stuff, it kind of just came down to, it was like, okay, well, we were just, seeing each other and then trying to figure out how to like align those, those kinks. And then by the time we did align, it was like, a month and a half in. And so again, all this stuff that I mentioned earlier, as far as just like our dynamics just not working out, as far as just like, our behaviors and all, and like dynamic overall just wasn't going to work. But yeah, I'm so sorry that, like in your case, like you didn't even have a say in it. It was just like, yeah, like you were just a prop. And like that's just, it's so I feel so mad for you because especially just like myself and just having friends or people that I know that are like that are in like dom sub or other types of relationships. I hear about how they're all how okay, yeah, like we always have this talk about consent, consent, consent. And in this case, that wasn't even like you didn't even have a chance to even give your opinion. So I'm so sorry about that.
I really appreciate your compassion. And I've been one thing I've thought about in my relationship is that the conversations you were having with your ex, I didn't. We
Yeah.
were open, but we had a very thin conversation about it when we decided, and at that point, I just presumed we were on the same pages of conforming to general principles of ethical non-monogamy, which are largely just consent and compassion. It doesn't really change from monogamy. Like, you're just supposed to think about your partner when you make decisions, kind of. But we
Yeah.
also didn't have that conversation about what it meant to be in a relationship. And I just assumed that we were on the same page that like being in a relationship meant that you considered your partner in your decisions. And the nature of this trauma, this form of betrayal trauma, is that I had a worldview which believed that people were on the same page of like a healthy relationship includes considering your partner in decisions. And now I've learned actually, no, that is not an everyone thing. And I've overcorrected. I just started dating a little bit, like putting my toes in, and I found myself overcorrecting. And now I'm in like control behavior where I'm trying to like have too many conversations up front and like stripping the relationship from organic development. Um, and I don't know what the balance is here either. Like your version of this sounds a lot more healthy than my kind of avoidant one, but now I am figuring out my own balance.
Yeah, and I think that's what it comes down to is like, finding out like the balance that works for you because I think ultimately the person that's for you, they're going to appreciate the way that you communicate it. So yeah.
I think it's so true. Like from couples therapy perspective and from my personal experience and from my clients, I noticed this trend of like people have begun to think they can make relationships with non-compatibility work if they can apply appropriate therapy speak. They can get the right nonviolent communication, if they
If I can
can
use
use
those buzzwords.
yeah, if I get the I feel statement in, and like my my fundamentally non-compatible relationship will work out because the problem is my communication of this. But actually, a lot of the healthiest relationships I see, they don't talk like that. They just have grace and compassion with each other. So if someone kind of like flips a gasket and is a little imprecise with their language or just a little angry, it's it that's not the ending point because the other partner can, like, sit and be the moderating factor, allow that, like, maybe this person's having an immoderate moment, and the person who's having an immoderate moment comes back in and repairs. And
Yes.
in a therapy speak world, in a relationship, like, we might label all that communication as unhealthy, but for them, because they have the grace and love and the compatibility, they navigate it, and it works for them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I definitely agree with that because like yeah, like they're going to communicate and figure these things out as they go cuz it's like yeah, like everybody is going to, because like yeah, like everyone wants to be communicated to in a certain way and it's just about finding a person that can kind of fit in that bubble instead of like trying to like oh yeah pull somebody who's like may not necessarily work out and like yeah let me use these buzzwords and see if this will turn them around. but but speaking on top of that too like now that I'm thinking about it another question too that I have for you kind of tying into that is like especially like symptom management. So another thing too that I noticed, so you kind of made a statement that symptom management often masquerades as care. So, kind of like just for my understanding, what are we getting wrong in modern healing systems, and what would care look like if we truly centered integration instead of just reducing like these symptoms?
It's a very broad question, but what I'll step back and just say is, who is defining what a symptom is?
Mm.
And if the person being quote unquote helped is not the person defining what the symptom is, or they are defining it from an internalized place of someone else, then that's not helping or healing or support, that's control. That's externalizing a social norm or a personal norm onto someone and saying, like, what you are is inconvenient to me or unlikable to me. And now I'm going to fix or help you by moving you against that symptom. And I think that is kind of number one. The main reason I left clinical psychotherapy is that I think clinical psychotherapy is a strong arm of capitalism and social norms. We diagnose people by the way that they are inconvenient to our society or capitalism, and then we say like, "I'm going to make you more convenient to society or capitalism." But actually, I don't have a fundamental belief people are meant to be convenient or easy, or any of that. And so, one of my most like borderline personality disorder is like my least favorite thing. And one of the things I really hate about it is when I learned about diagnosing it, there's just this textbook where it's just like, you'll know if someone has borderline personality disorder because you won't like them. And
It's
that
like
is
such a
like
broad.
core, like, who defines a symptom? I don't like you, you have a disorder. Uh,
Right.
I just don't think of things like this. And the way I work is more like, let's witness who you are and see what reasons you have for being, and also witness if those ways of being feel aligned to you. And I'm not going to say that you need to be calmer or more quote unquote well spoken or something like this. Maybe your truth is different. Maybe your truth makes me uncomfortable. But I'm just going to sit and witness and see what comes from you instead. And I think that's the core difference in my view. is
Yeah.
symptoms management is quite often a system of compliance.
No, that's a really good analysis there because and I think what kind of gives because like not only are like professionals kind of like giving like these diagnoses just based off just textbook and what they've learned in their practice, but also now we're hearing people that aren't even specialists or that don't even have these degrees like what you hold, or like people on social media they're just like they're just like I don't know, other podcasters or other people like, oh yeah, so if you're doing this, yeah, you're definitely bipolar. You're doing like, it's like, okay, I'm sorry, excuse you. I think social media also kind of amplifies this diagnoses, even from outside, like the outside world, and for us psychological degree holders. And so, yeah,
Yeah, and I don't like the diagnostics, period. There are a couple that I, like, think of as more neurological and I agree with, but for the most part, I think of them as I mean, they are just descriptive things. We're like, if you're sad, we might call it this. If we're this, we might call it this. But as it moved to social media and got this kind of self-diagnosis mentality, it adopted this secondary way of thinking, which is that your diagnosis is permanent. If you think you have
right,
generalized anxiety disorder, you start sustaining your generalized anxiety. But these are not permanent things. By nature of them being classified as a disorder in the first place, what we're saying is it's impermanent. It's just a current state. And there are probably things that are permanent states, just neurologically, like autism. And we can look at that as neurodivergence. But a lot of what is put under the neurodivergent umbrella right now is not necessarily permanent. So, like, look at generalized anxiety disorder, CPTSD, depression, even ADHD. Long term research on ADHD is that people move in and out of symptoms based on how comfortable they feel in their environment. It's almost a form of social protest, it's impermanent. And if we start to think of these things as like, oh, I am just this, then we don't change. But the nature of our body is amazing. We become what we do, and our body adapts to our lifestyle. Our entire muscle system changes on our posture and our like lifestyle. Nothing of these is necessarily permanent. It's just something we're moving through, and then we'll get to a new phase. And even if we call it a disorder, it's not like this is a broken piece of us. If you're going through a depressive period, you're gonna learn a lot from it. Uh,
yeah.
it's gonna feed you for the rest of your life. Uh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that definitely makes sense, and even to your point, because like a lot of times it does kind of tie back to, oh, well, this person isn't acting like the social norm or whatever is the quote unquote social standards, and a little bit of history lesson too for our listeners and viewers. At one point, especially this is like what only 50, 60 years ago, the government were saying like we're saying, oh well, people that are, that identify as queer like have a condition. It's a mental disorder. It's like what? It's like no. It's like oh, they're choosing to be this way. It's like no, you're born that way. Like this isn't. I didn't just like someone didn't just wake up like okay, well I woke up gay. It's like no, it doesn't work like that. And I think because it wasn't at that time society socially normal, and even like today some people are trying to make it unnormal, like it's just yeah, yeah, it's terrible. I hate how people try to diagnose other people, but yeah.
Same. And the DSM is full of these problems. The misogyny in a lot of the diagnosis is present, or we have things like obstinate defiant disorder and chronic disorder, which came on the war on crime. They were put into the DSM while we were systematically trying to incarcerate a large portion of the Black population, the people who are being diagnosed with these disorders, which have no basis in biology, they're just behavioral, were largely the Black population. And we just put them
Yeah.
in there as a punitive system to create the pre-K to prison pipeline. You put that on their paperwork at 4, you're kind of dooming them. But it was never real in the first place. It was a part of the system.
Yeah, exactly. And and I'm glad that that even like these days, like we're trying to, even with like the help of social media, sometimes social media like does help bring awareness. It's like okay, well now we're starting to hear more about how some of these like like I guess like wild practices that have occurred back then, or even just like making people more aware of like, okay, well, what's going on now? Like, how can we try to, fight and advocate for like all of these under resourced, groups? And so, yeah, I do think that, we still have a long way to go, like just in general, but I do appreciate that sometimes social media can try to help, educate, but yeah, but sometimes people do get shadow banned, especially under what's going on now. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Huh.
and even and oh, sorry, go
No,
ahead.
I was just sighing. I just had a
Yeah.
somatic release.
Oh yeah. Like yeah, like I'm sure our listeners like we're all just one collective. Yeah.
The energy right now is so rough. It feels like everyone is just one more triggering event from a breakdown. Everybody I
Yes.
touch, the nervous system is frayed. This transition period, the stars, whatever thing we're looking at all together, it is a fraying, challenging period.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I'm just hoping that we can, we can continue to try our best to navigate through and like and I am glad that that there are people like you out there that are helping so many people, trying to heal because yeah, we all do need help. We're like, like like because as humans, we are made to connect. We are like we were made to have these interactions and and so I do think that even just what you're doing, it is definitely helping, especially in times like these. So um and also kind of to go back to what you were saying earlier, so you said that you left a traditional clinical psychotherapy because it felt incomplete. So can was there like a moment that you kind of realized, okay, well, this system, just couldn't hold the kind of healing that you believe in, and then what did that shift kind of cost you personally, and maybe if you're willing to share professionally?
It wasn't one thing, and I'm gonna caveat in the first place, I have a lot of friends who stayed in clinical psychotherapy, and I think people do great work, and this is more of a question of, like, personal alignment and different approaches to creating change, and I think a lot
Yeah.
of great people try to create change within systems, and people try to create change out of systems, and we need both, and so what I'm gonna say is not me diminishing the profession as a whole. But for me, it was a death by a million cuts around the structural issues of psychotherapy. I always felt uncomfortable with the structures of psychotherapy. It's the illness medical model. The client comes, you see them as sick, you try to correct them. Um, and in my training, my experience was the profession largely seemed like it was structurally designed to stroke the narcissism of the therapist more than help the client, to see the therapist as the healer. And I began to feel really uncomfortable with my work because it atomized the problems of society into the individuals. And my job was literally to convince the individual was their problem and to get them into compliance. And I began to worry that the capitalization of psychotherapy was the strong arm of capitalism and colonialism to take people with hero or savior or martyr complexes and use their complex to get people into compliance with the system. And there's just a lot of things structurally that I was getting really uncomfortable with. And I was hitting the realization that what I was doing was not psychotherapy. I was subverting psychotherapy. I was taking insurance, but I technically, legally, in a past life, I'm a lawyer. So I tend to be like, I want to be on the correct side of the technicality. I was never doing it. I was always doing a model more like coaching. And most of the people I really respect are operating on models more like coaching because they are non-pathologizing. They try to subvert the system. They try to remember that people are having normative adaptive responses to their lived experience and we don't need to see them as ill. And we can always contextualize them as being a human in their environment. And there are a lot of people who do that within the legal area of psychotherapy. The question of whether or not they're complying with the laws of psychotherapy is a different question. But all these things made me really uncomfortable. And I just realized I didn't really want to be in a system I didn't fit in, that was fraying at my soul at too high a cost, and that I needed to kind of carve my own path, and it came at a lot of professional expense. Like, I went from, like, you have an easier client pipeline. in psychotherapy. You can take insurance, you can work in existing organizations, and there's something kind of predatory about the marketing, which is they come and you tell them you're ill and that you can fix them. And people are going to sign up for that because there's almost a trauma bond innate in it, which is that I'm telling you you're broken, I'm telling you I can fix you. And I actually don't believe that in myself. I fundamentally am not sure I can fix anyone. I don't even know what fixing means. So when my clients come, I'm just like, well, we're going to sit and witness and we're going to see what happens. And I make no promises. And I really have no idea what's going to happen. And that's not an easy selling point. I lost my therapy book of clients. Some people came with me, but I'm building a practice that is innately much harder to sell, doesn't have a structure behind it, and carving my own path. But it feels aligned. I feel like I have integrity in it, and I have faith that it'll come together.
For sure, for sure, and I'm glad that at least some of your clients, like, came with you, and so at least, like, there's, like, some people that are like, "Okay, you know what? Like, I love working with Devin, so you know what? I'm gonna, like, continue, moving forward with him." So that's really good that some did come with you, and I think ultimately, yeah, you're putting, like, your mental and your emotional, your psyche, at the forefront too, because it's like, yeah, if you're not feeling passionate about it, yeah, like how can you help your patients? How can you help others if it's like, okay, well, like every day I wake up, I don't really feel like, like this is right. And so I'm glad that you were able to kind of take that and kind of like, do some shifting and making it work, and now you're building it from the ground up. So if you ask me, I think that's a win right there. So
For me, it's definitely a win and a challenge.
yeah, yeah. Yes, yes. And, and speaking of, challenges, so, I kind of did had a question about this too. So, many LGBTQ adults feel caught between, competing expectations, and especially, again, kind of just going back to what we were saying about societal expectations, or even just, like familial, social media, like all these different things. Um, like, I guess, how do you help somebody recognize when they are playing the game of belonging instead of just living authentically? And what's the first step, I guess, out of like that pattern?
Oh, I think it might be a little bit different for everyone. But a lot of the core question, if you're playing the game of belonging or actually belonging, is do you feel lonely or not when you're with other people? And
Yeah,
a lot of clients come thinking that they're doing the things that they have community, but somehow it feels isolating. They feel lonely. It just doesn't seem to be having the effect that it's supposed to be having. And it's a gradual process from there of like you can't feel seen if you're not showing up as yourself.
right.
You can't be loved if they don't see who you are. To be loved is to be understood. To be seen is to be understood. And if you're not allowing someone to understand you, then the fundamental thing always it kind of misses. Um, and the LGBT population, like all minority populations, have kind of code switching standards. They have the model minority piece, which is like, I'm going to try to conform to society at large to reduce the cost of oppression. And then there's the local community standards. And for the LGBT population, I work mostly with gay men. This feels really potent in sexual expression because usually they carry a dueling standard of like society says all of my sex is immoral. And so there's real shame around sex at all. But then if you go to certain gay events, the opposite standard is kind of implicit curriculum that you're not enlightened if you're not kinky or you're not polyamorous or you're not uh, very sexual. And then they feel a dueling pressure to really would do more on that side. And whenever there's a dueling conformist standard, the person exists somewhere in the middle usually.
Hmm.
Um, but they end up bouncing between them, thinking they have to comply to both, and both create a lot of shame. And the shame itself, there's gonna be another layer of shame on top of it because you're trying on both sides. You're always trying to be the good boy. You're always trying to conform. And the bargain that is in people's heads that if I conform, I get belonging was always a broken bargain because You can't get belonging if you're conforming as opposed to being yourself.
Yeah, I definitely agree because, like, yeah, if you're trying to fit into all these buckets and pour energy into all these different, facets of life or where people think you belong or you're supposed to be, eventually, yeah, to your point, you're gonna like be pouring from an empty cup. And it's like, what's left for yourself? Like, how are you even gonna show up for yourself? Like what is your identity if you put these other personas into all these other brackets, yeah, now you just lost your sense of self. And so yeah, like I like that's a really great point. It's like, we shouldn't be trying to fit ourselves into whatever it is that, society thinks that we're supposed to be, because it's like, like just given the way that society is, or even just given like, the quote unquote powers that be, if we all fit into our stereotypes, oh yeah, we'd be regressing another 100, 200 something years. So we are kind of already are, but yeah.
Yeah, we are. And I'll add the caveat that like masks serve a safety purpose. Shame serves a safety purpose. Shame comes when we are being signaled that we're apt to be ostracized for our authenticity.
Mhm.
And there's nothing inherently wrong with masking, but it becomes really damaging when we start to identify with the mask or we're not consciously choosing to mask. Because masking, if we're making a conscious decision, is playful, it's fun. I'm entertaining a different side of me, I'm experimenting. But when masking is subconscious, when it's really wrapped up in an ego identification, that's when it becomes isolating.
Yeah. That definitely makes sense. That definitely makes sense because it's like, I guess like a perfect example that I can think of is example. So I do musical theater. I'm like this vibrant, like just this loud, outgoing, energetic type of person. But of course, like my day job or even like in a corporate setting, yeah, I still give a little bit of that, but I'm not like, hey guys, what's up? Like, I'm kind of, I'll of course, kind of stick to getting business done. But yeah, there's some playfulness here and there. But yeah, like and even on top of that, as even just as a black person, I got to do a little bit of code switching too, because it's like, okay, well, how I talk with like my friends or even like family or whatever is like, yeah, it's a little bit different than how I'm gonna like talk on a call. And so it's kind of funny because a couple of my friends, because sometimes like I, especially even working remote, some of like my friends who have heard me on like a remote call is like, oh Sean, like your corporate voice, oh my, you sound so proper. um, so so kind of agreeing with what you're saying. Yes, like yeah, there is kind of like that balance.
Yeah, sometimes masking is authentic, but it comes
Hmm.
down to our agency and our choice. And I'm laughing because I used to do a lot of public speaking, and my best friend told me once, she's like, "You have a public speaking voice. It's so different. What is this?" I do think I've started to like move my public speaking voice a little closer to my real voice, but it's gradual.
And then so yeah, so even like your work and how it just blends psychotherapy, somatics, nutrition, energy healing, Buddhism, yoga, even without asking clients to adopt a belief system, which is really cool, by the way. So how do you balance science and spirituality in a way that feels grounded rather than abstract?
So fundamentally, I think spirituality is a form of science. Um, and I am drawn to forms of spirituality that have cosmology or anatomy to them. I pull a lot from yoga, and yoga has an entire anatomical way of understanding the body. Traditional Chinese medicine has an entire anatomical way of understanding the body. And so, they're in some ways we think of them as spiritual, but they are just a different way of experiencing knowledge or coming to an understanding of the world. And so, I try to think of my taking of spirituality as other forms of science or other forms of knowing. But one thing that really I think shook me in my way of adopting belief systems is when I did my yoga teacher training and I started yoga. There's this word in Sanskrit and I don't remember it, but it's instead of philosophy, it's like lived experience understanding. And there are many branches of yoga, and there's not the belief that one branch of yoga is right for everyone. The invitation of yoga is to find the branch that meets your lived experience. And I love that as a view. And so I pull from a lot of things, and some of them will land for clients and some of them won't. And I will tell them in the beginning, I don't care at all if a client sees something about me, but I can pull from a lot of different viewpoints, a lot of different cosmologies, a lot of different anatomies, and together we can see what framework helps them to come to their lived experience understanding of their body and their experience. Um, it's going to be different with every
Yeah.
client.
Absolutely, yeah. Because I could imagine even, like, your clientele, and how, you already have, like, a certain base that kinda came with you, and now you're acquiring, new leads and new people. Yeah, of course, they're gonna have, like, yeah, some of these different kinda backgrounds and concepts, or even just, what they believe, whether spiritually, or even, in other facets. And so I'm glad that you're able to kind of, yeah, like, yeah, it doesn't matter w kind of like what realm, or like that they're coming from. I think, like, yeah, like from what I'm gathering is, it's like, yeah, you want to make sure that whatever they're coming to you with as far as where they want to go, especially just like, even just like psychologically wise, you're there to kind of help guide them on that path to healing and coaching without, yeah, having like any biases even of your own.
Yeah, whatever works for me might not work for a client. And one of my mentors, she's Lithuanian, and there's a saying, I guess, in Lithuania, which is if you're categorical about anything, you're going to be wrong.
Yeah.
And I think of my work like this. I just assume that whatever I am presenting is more likely to be wrong than right. We're just playing, we're experimenting. I like my cosmologies, I like my spiritualities, but I imagine that a lot of them are wrong. We're always just navigating kind of a mess. And it comes back to like making your meaning. And even my most atheist clients, I think, come to this understanding, which I think is the basis of a lot of spirituality, that life is just a lot more pleasant if we think it has meaning.
Yeah. Exactly, exactly. I agree with you on that, because I think, what did I saw this clip, what was it, when this guy had, like, forget the name of the podcast, but basically this guy interviewed, Barack Obama, and he had, like, confirmed, "Oh, yeah, aliens are real," or whatever. And, like, of course, people say, "Oh my god, I knew it, this, that, and the other." And I remember some people in the comments kinda getting into arguments over, like, like, the spiritual existence of aliens. What does that mean for Christianity and stuff like that? I'm like, "Oh, okay." Like, and even, like, on top of that, I was like, "Yeah, I guess if we were to really find out, oh, yeah, there really is no God, okay, well, we just found out via this." I don't know, like, let's just give an example. Aliens just drop out of the sky, give us, like, all the evidence. "Hey, we created y'all. This is what's supposed to happen. This is what's not supposed to happen." Oh, yeah, that would pretty much upend, like, a lot of people's, like, will to live, because it's like, "Oh, I lived my entire life, believing this or not believing this." And so, yeah, I think you're right. Sometimes people believing in something kinda does make, life, a little bit more manageable.
It certainly helps suffering. My like personal therapist coach, like her view of all spirituality boils down to like, it's hard to suffer. So spirituality comes in to help us think that suffering has a purpose.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I certainly think it helps us get through suffering because otherwise it's really easy to sulk forever. If I looked at my breakup as just something that happened to me, I could just sit in destitution for a long time. If I look at it as like, maybe this was karmic. And certainly, I think if I allow it to, this is a story about reclaiming my power and reorienting myself. And maybe there's a reason for it. And there's an agency in that recreation of narrative that I think is an innate draw of spirituality, of all traditions.
Absolutely, absolutely. I definitely love that. It's helping people without, yeah, like, yeah, without, like, trying to sway someone towards a certain, way of being or state of being. So yeah, like, I love that. I love that so much. Um, and, like, before we get to the listener submissions, I do got one last question for you. So this one really stood out to me. This one's very interesting, just learning this upon you. So, you're co-translating Leela, which is an ancient Indian map of human experience. I know nothing about this, so, like, this is me literally, like being like the, "Hey, treat me like a kindergartner. Tell me all about this." So, what does this thousand-year-old, game tech kind of tells us about modern burnout, anxiety, and the search for a purpose?
You might actually know of the game because the board is the inspiration for Shoots and Ladders. So the Shoots and Ladders board is essentially the Leela board.
Oh, Oh, all right. Okay.
So Leela is this philosophy that was translated into a board game at some unknown time. It was kind of refound. It's gone through many iterations. But Leela is the Indic philosophy that life is cosmic play, that we all share cosmic consciousness, and cosmic consciousness just started creating things to have rich experiences. And we're just an iteration of that rich experience. And there's this belief in Leela that we come into a human form with a purpose and a theater. And the purpose of the game is to play that role full throatedly, to not resist it, to just engage in the drama and love it. And so the board itself has the 7 chakras, the 7 major realms of consciousness, and then different pieces of consciousness within each of those, and then a realm of the divine. But the nature of it is that it's not linear, that life is not linear. You go into life with kind of like a question and a purpose, and every aspect of it is meaningful. So you'll land on a square like nihilism or suffering or greed. And it's not that that's a less spiritual experience or you're less evolved, but that is a part of the nature of being human to be fully embraced and learned from. And that everything, if we just allow ourselves to take it in as a rich experience, transforms us in a really powerful way. And we just dive into it. It's a weird philosophy in the sense of like why would our highest consciousness decide to make something so miserable sometimes, right? But if we
Yeah.
think about like the movies we like to watch, we create art that stirs us. And so in a way, our life in Leela is art that the highest version of our consciousness is watching. And
Wow.
by experiencing at this lower level of consciousness, it moves us, it transforms us, it's enriching. Um, I love the game. I changed my entire view of life. Like maybe I'm in this nihilism, maybe I'm in this depression, but 5 years ago I would have looked at it and thought I'm failing, or like this is me regressing, or this is a low point in my healing journey. And now I just think, oh, I just needed to be here. And I will learn the lesson from here, and then I will move back up. And then maybe at age 42, I'll be back here. But the
Yeah.
nature is the ups and downs.
Absolutely. Wow. No, that like thank you for providing like that context because wow, this sounds like such a cool, self-discovery type of game. And so I already know like what the listeners and viewers are probably thinking. Like I guess as far as like question wise, where can you find a game like this? So if I were to be like, hey, I want to go buy this for myself, literally asking for me, where can you find this?
So it's kind of hard right now, which is why we're code translating this book, because the only kind of information on it is not in good text. I did like an in-person extensive training so I could facilitate this. But I will say, I mean, if anyone wants to run it, they could pay me and I will happily run the game for them or a group. But we're hoping to launch a Kickstarter in September or October with our new translation. And I use translation vaguely because we're just trying to find bridge language for a modern audience to tap into this old wisdom, not change it, modify it, just help people with a different vocabulary see this old information. But hopefully a Kickstarter. So if they like subscribe to my newsletter, follow me on Instagram, eventually they'll get that Kickstarter.
Absolutely. Like, no, thank you for that, for that plug. And like, we'll definitely, those of you tuning in, we'll definitely make sure to link all of Devin's information and his socials and stuff in the bio of this episode so you can connect and yeah, get started and work with Devin. So Devin, we got a few listener submissions that we got to unpack and they want our opinions on this. So are you ready to do this?
Let's do it.
All right. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, can you do me a really quick favor? Can you please rate and review this podcast? Hit that 5-star review and I do read all the reviews because this helps me know how this podcast is helping others and how this podcast is serving you, because my job as a host is to serve you this podcast the way that you would prefer it to be. So we got a few listener submissions here. So these all come from the dating app Hinge. And so I want to thank the listeners for submitting this. If you want to get involved and have a guest and me unpack your screenshots, your questions, stories, whatever, situationspodcast.com/submit. And it's an anonymous form. I won't know, Devin won't know who submitted what. So just submit it there and we will unpack it. So this first one says, the one thing you should know about me is I have high standards and I'm already disappointed in you. Is this hinged or unhinged?
I'm in a particularly unforgiving space right now after my breakup. So I'm going to go with unhinged. If it reads condescending, I'm going to assume they're condescending.
Oh yeah, I agree. It's very unhinged because it's like, what is like? I didn't even get like it's like the minute you encounter me or find out about me, you're already disappointed. All right, well then, what's the point of putting in any time, money, and effort?
And this
Swipe
is your
left.
best foot forward.
Right, exactly. But you know what? Like the funny thing about this is, on the other end of it, someone could say, "Oh, well, they're just being playful," but it's like, but like, why this?
Yeah.
Why this?
And jokes always have a kernel of truth.
Yes, there's always a truth behind every just kidding. Agree, unhinged. This second one says, the key to my heart is leaving me alone. Is this hinged or unhinged?
I'm still in a very unforgiving place. I would love so I know how you go unhinged on this, but I think if you'd asked me 6 months ago, I would have contextualized it within the rest of the profile and made a decision that way.
For sure, for sure. I definitely think this one is unhinged as well. I'm agreeing with you on this one, and I think maybe this person that has this on their profile, maybe I don't know, maybe like they've are just like everybody who's like, oh, I'm so tired of the dating apps, just leave me alone. Like, so maybe it's that. I like, but I'm with you on that. I'm in my sad boy era, so I'm gonna say unhinged. This last one says, my therapist would say that I am trash but nice. Wow. Is this hinged or unhinged? Imagine if your client told you, hey, I think that maybe Devin, you as my therapist, I think you think that I'm trash, but I'm nice.
I do think this one I would contextualize within the profile and try to get if this was a sense of humor. Actually, I find the trash but nice a little bit funny, but I find myself wondering why they chose this prompt.
Yeah. Same, same. Because like again, like sometimes whenever like the listeners like they'll submit stuff, sometimes they'll kind of give like a backstory or like a sentence or two. This one was just like, "Can you unpack this?" I'm like, "Sure." I think that's the one downside to like the online form. It like because it's anonymous, I can't really like jump in and hit reply. Oh yeah, can you give more background? So that's the only downside to it. But yeah, to me this reads okay, maybe they know that they are maybe I hate this like say societally or whatever, but socially or societally, I guess they're a lot, but or whatever. But at the same time, maybe one of their redeeming qualities is that they're nice, and maybe they're finding and discovering this by talking with their therapist. Oh yeah, maybe I did do some pretty terrible things to people, but I do have a nice demeanor when people are on my good side.
Uh, Now you're making me think because I identify as trash, but like Forky style trash. Like I was always moving towards trash. I think trash is home, but I think I'd be
Yeah,
more likely to put I'm a chaos gremlin, which is my more go-to language for this.
I like
Um,
that.
but I like the joke of trash.
Hmm.
Uh,
Oh yeah, me
but
too.
not
Oh, go ahead.
I okay. I think I might just be the things I'm actually more likely to call on a hinge that is like I don't like people who identify as nice because if people who identify as nice to me often lack backbone or they are unwilling to speak honestly. Um,
Yes.
and I don't want someone who's nice. I want someone who will call me on my shit and will show up like forcefully and knowing their standards. So I think I'm more likely to go okay on trash and be like, oh, yellow flag on nice. And I'm seeing there's kind of prompt you. It's like my best friends would describe me as. And I think that would be
Yeah.
funnier. So I'm like, why are you cueing me? You have a therapist here. So I'm probably reading into it far too much, but I'm also in my sad girl era, so I'm pretty unforgiving.
Yes, yes, go off. Yes, I love it. I love it. No, you see, and see, I like how you dissected this because this is why you're here. Because like as somebody who is like a therapist, and you have all of these degrees, especially with the human brain. I'm glad to like to hear you kind of give like that therapeutic kind of spin on it. So I agree. I'll say beige flag.
I like that. I like beige flag for this.
Awesome, awesome. No, these were really, really, really good. Thank you so much to the listeners for submitting that. And thank you, Devin, for coming on to the show, providing your insights, letting us know all about you and your practices. And really quick for our listeners, can you let us know where we can find you? Feel free to let us know your social media, all of it.
So I am new to Instagram, but I have a commitment this year to figure it out. So that's devinscott.nyc. And I prefer kind of writing blogs and things like that. So if you go to my website at findyourmeaning.coach, scroll down to the bottom, there's a newsletter. Uh, I will write more like long and medium form content to go there. But then I am committed to repurposing it and putting it on social media. So whichever you follow me on, you'll get the content.
Wonderful, wonderful. And we'll make sure to link your website as well. And if you're watching on YouTube or watching on the Spotify version, you'll see his socials and his website pop up and everything. And so, yeah, make sure to follow and get in contact and work with Devin. And yeah, Devin, are there any last words or words of wisdom you would like to share with our audience?
Oh, coming into my like sad girl, untrusting era, and my lesson from my breakup is the one I'm going to share, which is that you don't need to know what's happening to trust yourself. So if you are in the situation, you are dating, and it is making you feel unwell, or making you feel unsafe, or you're just not liking who you are in it, you can just trust yourself. You don't need a reason. You don't need a sign off. You can just decide you prefer to like your situation more than you are.
Absolutely. I love that. Yes. I couldn't have said that better. We love it. Yes. And with that, whether you all are on a boat, a plane, a train, hey, maybe you're listening to this right now and you're probably one of Devin's clients or soon to be clients. You can take Situations podcast with you wherever you go. We are everywhere. And again, make sure to follow Devin, work with Devin. And yeah, with that, I will see you all back here for the next episode in a couple of weeks. Woo!